What happened to Jimin right after BTS finished day 2 in Toronto has ARMY asking one question: what did Dior just give him? The concert had barely ended. The lights were still fading. The echoes of thousands of voices were still hanging in the Toronto night. And then, behind the scenes, something unexpected happened. A Dior representative reportedly met Jimin after the show, and they didn't arrive empty-handed. They came with a special gift. But here's the part that has people curious. Why Jimin? Why immediately after the concert? And what was inside that carefully presented gift? Because after everything Jimin had just experienced on that stage, the timing of this meeting made the moment feel completely different. And before we get to the gift itself, we need to go back to the moment BTS Day 2 finally came to an end. Because that's when the entire atmosphere changed. The final moments of BTS Day 2 in Toronto were filled with the kind of energy only a BTS concert can create. The stage was glowing. The crowd was still screaming. Purple lights moved through the venue like waves. And somewhere beneath all of that noise was Jimin. Just moments earlier, he had been standing in front of thousands upon thousands of ARMY, performing under an intensity that is difficult to describe. Every movement was being watched. Every expression was being captured. Every smile became a memory. But when the performance ended, something interesting happened. The superstar on stage suddenly had to become Jimin again. No enormous stage. No roaring crowd. No spotlight following every movement. Just the quiet reality of what comes after a massive concert. And that's where this story begins. Because while fans were still processing what they had just witnessed, Jimin was moving backstage. The atmosphere was completely different. The volume had dropped. The adrenaline was still there, but the environment had become calmer. Staff members were moving around. Equipment was being handled. The night was slowly transitioning from performance mode into recovery mode. And then came the unexpected meeting. A representative connected with Dior was there to meet Jimin. Now, for anyone who follows Jimin closely, that detail alone is enough to raise eyebrows. Because Dior and Jimin have a relationship that has become one of the most recognizable partnerships in the world of luxury fashion. His connection with the house isn't simply about wearing expensive clothes. It's about image, elegance, art, and a visual identity that has repeatedly made headlines. So when a Dior representative appears immediately after a major BTS performance, ARMY naturally starts wondering. Was this meeting planned long before the concert? Or was there something special about this particular night? And that's where the mystery gets even more interesting. Because the representative wasn't simply there to say congratulations. There was something else. A package. A gift. And suddenly, a routine post-concert encounter became a moment that fans couldn't stop thinking about. Imagine the scene. The concert is over. The noise outside is slowly disappearing. Jimin has just finished performing for an enormous audience. The lights that had illuminated the stage are now gone. And instead of thousands of cameras, there's a much quieter environment backstage. Then someone approaches. A Dior representative. There is a greeting. A smile. A brief exchange. And then comes the moment that changes everything. The gift is presented. Not thrown casually onto a table. Not handed over without ceremony. But presented as something meaningful. And that's when you have to ask yourself, what kind of gift would Dior choose for Jimin after a night like this? A fashion item? A personal keepsake? Something connected to a recent Dior collection? Or something completely unexpected? That's the question ARMY couldn't answer. And the lack of immediate explanation only made the curiosity stronger. Because sometimes, the mystery surrounding a gift becomes almost as fascinating as the gift itself. And Jimin's reaction is what makes this moment even more intriguing. Think about how different this is from the image we usually see. On stage, Jimin is surrounded by noise. Thousands of people chanting his name. Music shaking the venue. Lights flashing. Cameras everywhere. He has to maintain focus even when the energy becomes overwhelming. But backstage? The energy changes. There is no need to perform for anyone. No choreography. No microphone. No massive stage. Just a person coming down from an intense emotional experience. And then someone from Dior arrives with a surprise. That contrast is powerful. Because the same person who had just been commanding an entire arena was now standing in a quieter environment receiving something personal. And perhaps that's why the moment caught people's attention. It wasn't another spectacular stage clip. It wasn't another dramatic performance. It was something smaller. Something more intimate. And sometimes, those moments say more than the biggest performances ever could. But there was still one question. What exactly was the special gift? Here's where we need to slow down for just a second. Because when moments like this spread through fan communities, it's very easy for speculation to become fact. So let's keep the focus on what makes the moment interesting without pretending we know details that haven't been officially confirmed. The meeting itself is what has sparked curiosity. The Dior connection is already significant. And the timing, immediately following BTS Day 2 in Toronto, makes the encounter especially memorable. As for the exact contents of the gift, unless Dior or Jimin officially reveals them, we shouldn't treat fan theories as confirmed information. But that doesn't make the mystery less exciting. Actually, it makes it more interesting. Because now ARMY has a puzzle. A Dior representative. Jimin. A post-concert meeting. And a special gift. 4 pieces. 1 unanswered question. What was inside? And there is another reason this moment matters. It isn't only about the object. It's about what the gesture represents. Luxury fashion houses don't build relationships with artists overnight. There is a tremendous amount of strategy behind global ambassadors, campaigns, appearances, collections, and public image. But the human side of those relationships is rarely what audiences get to see. That's why small moments can feel surprisingly meaningful. A representative taking the time to meet an artist after a major performance. A gift being presented. A few quiet moments away from the stage. Those details can make a huge global partnership feel personal. And with Jimin, that connection has become particularly recognizable. His style has often been associated with a balance between softness and sophistication. He can appear delicate in one moment and intensely powerful in another. And that same contrast appeared during the Toronto concert. On stage, explosive energy. Off stage, a much quieter atmosphere. Then Dior enters the picture. And suddenly, those two worlds collide. But the timing still raises another question. Why wait until after day 2? Maybe the answer is simple. Maybe it was a planned gesture following the concert. Maybe the team wanted to congratulate him after a successful performance. Maybe the gift was connected to fashion. Maybe it was simply a thoughtful gesture. We don't know. And that's exactly why the story is so compelling. Because the internet hates an unanswered question. Especially when the person at the center of it is Jimin. Within minutes, fans can turn one small moment into a global conversation. One photo can trigger thousands of reactions. One mysterious box can create endless theories. And suddenly, the focus isn't only on the concert anymore. It's on what happened after the concert. That's the hidden chapter fans didn't see from the arena. And sometimes, the hidden chapter is the one everyone remembers. Now picture Jimin leaving the performance environment. The sweat and adrenaline from the stage haven't completely disappeared. The sounds of the concert are still fresh in his mind. He has just experienced another enormous night in Toronto. And then someone tells him Dior has come to see him. There is something almost cinematic about that transition. From thousands of voices to a quiet greeting, from blinding stage lights to a carefully presented gift, from performance mode to a private moment. And somewhere in between those two worlds is Jimin. That's what makes the scene feel so human. Because behind the celebrity, behind the fashion ambassador, behind the global superstar, there is still someone experiencing the emotional aftermath of a concert. And perhaps that's why a simple gift can carry more emotional weight than people realize. It becomes a punctuation mark at the end of a huge night. A quiet "you did well." A small gesture after a massive performance. And that possibility makes the moment feel beautiful. But ARMY wasn't finished asking questions. Because another detail started becoming impossible to ignore. Why did Dior make this particular gesture at this particular moment? Jimin's relationship with Dior has already been closely followed by fans around the world. Whenever he appears wearing the brand, attention follows. Whenever he attends a Dior-related event, cameras turn. Whenever he steps into a fashion environment, his presence becomes part of the conversation. But a post-concert meeting feels different. It's not a runway. It's not a fashion week. It's not a red carpet. It's after a BTS concert. That distinction matters. Because it suggests the encounter was happening within a much more personal and immediate context. The night belonged to BTS. The stage belonged to the members. The screams belonged to ARMY. And then, after all of that, Dior had its own small moment with Jimin. That's almost poetic. And it leads to a bigger thought. Perhaps the gift wasn't important because of its price. Perhaps it was important because of the timing. Think about that. A luxury gift can be expensive. But expensive doesn't automatically mean meaningful. The meaning comes from the moment. Imagine receiving something after accomplishing something you've worked incredibly hard for. You have just performed for thousands of people. Your body is exhausted. Your emotions are still high. And someone hands you a carefully chosen gift. Suddenly, the object becomes a memory. Years later, the thing itself might not even matter as much as the night attached to it. That is why ARMY's curiosity makes sense. Fans aren't only asking, "What did Jimin receive?" They're really asking, "What happened to Jimin after that incredible night?" And that is a much deeper question. Meanwhile, Toronto was still alive. Outside the venue, ARMY were leaving with memories of the concert. Some were still screaming. Some were reviewing videos. Some were talking about their favorite Jimin moments. Some were probably already editing clips before they even reached their hotel. And somewhere away from that chaos, Jimin was experiencing a completely different version of the night. A quieter one. A private one. A moment involving Dior. And a mysterious gift. That contrast is what makes the story feel almost like a movie. The audience gets the spectacle. The artist gets the aftermath. And the aftermath often contains the moments nobody expects. But there's still a missing piece. The reaction. Because if the gift itself created curiosity, Jimin's response could reveal even more. Was he surprised? Was he smiling? Did he immediately recognize what it was? Did he laugh? Did he thank the representative? Was it something he had been expecting? Or was it genuinely unexpected? Without an official detailed account, we shouldn't invent those reactions. But we can understand why fans are fascinated by the possibility. Jimin has always had a way of making small expressions feel significant. A smile. A nod. A brief glance. A tiny laugh. For someone watched by millions, even the smallest reaction can become a major fan moment. And that is precisely why a gift from Dior after a major BTS concert can generate so much interest. It isn't necessarily because something dramatic happened. Sometimes the opposite is true. Something simple happened. And because of who Jimin is, the world noticed. Now let's zoom out. BTS Day 2 in Toronto wasn't just another date on a tour schedule. For ARMY, every concert becomes a collection of moments. A gesture. A joke. A dance. A vocal performance. A look toward the crowd. A goodbye. And after the final song, there is always this strange emotional transition. The concert ends. The lights come up. People start leaving. But the emotions don't disappear immediately. That is the strange magic of live music. You can spend hours surrounded by tens of thousands of people, feeling completely connected to them. Then suddenly, it's over. Silence. And the artist experiences that transition too. Maybe that's why the Dior meeting feels significant. It happened during that emotional space between the performance and the rest of the night. A moment when Jimin was no longer standing under the spotlight. Yet somehow, the spotlight followed him. And here's the bigger story. Jimin's influence extends far beyond music. His presence connects entertainment, fashion, beauty, culture, and global fandom. That's why a meeting like this immediately attracts attention. It's a reminder that Jimin isn't only being watched by music fans. Fashion audiences are watching. Luxury brands are watching. Global media are watching. And ARMY are watching everything. One appearance can cross multiple worlds at once. Music. Fashion. Pop culture. Celebrity influence. And that's exactly what happened here. The concert created the stage. Jimin created the moment. Dior added the unexpected twist. And ARMY created the conversation. But we're still left with that mysterious question. What was the gift? Some fans may imagine it was a piece from a Dior collection. Others may think it could have been something personalized. Some might speculate that it was connected to Jimin's work with the brand. And others may simply enjoy the mystery without needing an immediate answer. Honestly, that's part of the fun. Not every moment needs to be solved instantly. Sometimes a little mystery is what makes a moment memorable. And until an official source confirms the exact item, the most responsible thing is to keep those theories in the category they belong. Theories. Because the real story is already interesting enough. Dior made the effort to meet Jimin after BTS Day 2 in Toronto. A special gift was involved. And the encounter happened after a night that had already given ARMY countless unforgettable memories. That alone is worth talking about. But imagine for a moment how different Jimin's night was compared with that of the average concertgoer. ARMY arrived excited. They waited. They screamed. They watched the show. They sang along. They cried. They captured memories. Then they went home. Jimin's night continued. The performance had ended, but his schedule hadn't necessarily ended with it. There were people to thank. Staff to work with. Things to organize. And then Dior. A completely different world waiting behind the curtain. It's almost like the concert had two endings. The first ending belonged to ARMY. The second belonged to Jimin. And that second ending is the one that suddenly became the mystery. There is something deeply fascinating about what happens after the applause. During the concert, everything is visible. The stage is huge. The lights are bright. The emotions are amplified. But afterward, everything becomes smaller. A hallway. A conversation. A handshake. A package. A smile. And somehow, those smaller moments can feel even more intimate. Because they aren't designed for an arena. They happen because people are there. And perhaps that's why this Dior moment feels so intriguing. It wasn't about creating another giant spectacle. It was a quiet gesture following a giant spectacle. That contrast is what gives the moment emotional weight. And if you've been watching Jimin's journey for years, you know why this kind of moment hits differently. We've watched him evolve. We've watched his confidence grow.